How good is the new Cookout shotgun? Which backpack and support stratagems work best with it? Is it really viable in T10 missions? I set out to explore these questions, and let me tell you folks, this Cookout shotgun that I've been experimenting with since the warbond drop today is absolutely relentless and a joy to play when going up against swarming, skittering bugs. With positional awareness and a burning desire, no pun intended, to get right into the front lines of terminid operations, it allows us to crowd control and bully hunters, warriors, red warriors, alpha commanders, and perhaps most impressively, it can even stunlock stalkers, folks. So, is it viable really in T10? Yes. And with the recent nerf to the breaker incendiary, it has been widely considered that there are an ever reducing number of primary weapons that can hold their own in the upper echelons of difficulty against bugs. I am pleased to report that you can set yourself up here to be an aggressive frontline dominator, totally hold your own, racking up insane kill counts, and create space for you and your team. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. Your role in this build is very simple. Fully bully and neutralize swarm threats and prioritize keeping the tide of bugs at bay, away from you and away from your team. Equipping the Cookout makes you a serious pain in most terminid sides, making you a worthy adversary for those million bug breaches that we have to come across in T10. It can dispose of most light and medium terminid enemies effectively, and provided you are prepared to put yourself in quite dangerous positions with confidence and conviction, this build is incredibly punchy and exciting to play. Hunters can be taken down in 1 to 2 shots, provided you are getting direct hits on the main center of mass, and as with all chaff enemy types, they get knocked around a lot when taking hits, which is incredibly useful for keeping this scary, panic-inducing threat at bay. Alpha commanders are also easily bullied away from you, and you can decapitate them in a handful of blasts. Folks, I can't stress enough, this shotgun knocks terminids around for fun. Previously, it was the blitzer that I sort of put on a pedestal for this, but this is actually rivaling my interest in the blitzer, and if you know me, you'll know that that's quite a big statement for me. I've had so much fun using this weapon, and it's the crowd control potentially that is doing that for me. Hive guards are also quite comfortable to take on, and it's only really bile spewers that I've come across that are a real pain. Not only does the shotgun itself do very meaty raw damage, but it also applies a fire dot to enemies that it hits. You can really feel this, folks, if you start spreading your shots across a horde of enemies, and this seems to be probably the best way to maintain good ammo economy as a rule of thumb. The fire dot that it applies is such a lifeline against shriekers, and whilst it doesn't go anywhere near to the dizzying heights of the incendiary breaker in this position, it cannot be understated just how welcome having another weapon that can deal with them is. Bile spewers, as I've just mentioned, are something I would recommend not going toe-to-toe with if you can help it. Unfortunately, in T10, they do seem to be in abundance. It's not to say you can't handle missions with them, but it is a bit of a pain. I wouldn't recommend everybody in your squad going with the Cookouts to try and deal with these, folks. They are a bit of a nightmare. But with that being said, I don't think this writes it off, because instead you can just use things like stun grenades or well-placed stratagems to dispose of these acidic nuisances. Now, obviously, putting yourself in harm's way while playing this build comes with quite a high risk factor of being overwhelmed, so therefore it is important that we put a number of safety precautions in place to support our Cookhouse-centric playstyle. It's always an obvious one here, folks. The medic armor passive is still an absolute must. This lets us heal through any damage we happen to take from making a mistake for an extra 2 seconds and carry an additional 2 stims. Stun grenades are the perfect support tool for this loadout because it allows us to calm things down when the situation starts to get too intense, and it lets us get into favourable positions, throw in our stratagems, or get shots off on heavy targets such as chargers and bile titans with our support weapon of choice. More on that later. It's all about drawing in the enemy, creating space for you and your team, and mopping up as many bugs as possible. Now, this is all well and good, decimating hordes of chaff in a swashbuckling barbecue manner, but what happens when chargers, bile titans, and our new friend, the impaler, are inevitably thrown into the mix? A very fair question, and this is where things start to heat up and make this build even more fun to play. I'm going to keep this simple and be honest. The weapon came out today, so my test pool for support weapons has been limited. However, I found myself landing on the spear as a weapon of choice here. It just does so well against all larger terminid units, and now with the addition of impalers, this just feels so solid to play. It also deals with terminid structures in a very direct manner, and having the ability to sometimes one-tap a Bile Titan is something which just cannot be ignored. However, if you would rather keep that backpack slot free, then of course the Commando or our old friend the Quasar remains the supreme choice here. I feel that having a jetpack and a quasar at your disposal with this loadout is a very strong option to go with, and I would recommend giving this a shot if you want to be more mobile in your approach to missions. I certainly will be working on this, and you know, if you've looked at my previous blitzer video, that this combination just works fantastic when you're in a bullying style build. Just before we jump into stratagems, I just wanted to highlight that you can find me streaming on both Twitch and YouTube, which is where most of the footage you are watching has been captured. So with that in mind, make sure you drop the channel a subscribe and the video a like to keep up to date with all things Helldivers too. It also really helps me out, folks. Thank you. Now on to our stratagem choices. One of the huge merits of taking a support choice like the spear or perhaps the auto cannon gives us that extra orbital or eagle slot, which I'm pleased to report in this particular setup absolutely slaps. I've been running this with eagle cluster, airburst and orbital precision strike. The eagle cluster needs no introduction, folks. It just does superb work when placed correctly on frightening offensive terminid waves, and given the substantial increase in enemies on T10, this eagle continues to shine and really show what it is made of, especially when backed up with the orbital airburst. Again, this needs no introduction. This specializes in deleting stationary hordes and, most importantly, dealing with those scary bug breaches. If you see a breach open, wait until around the second or third flare appears, then give it a moment and then throw it in. Hold off as much as you can. This ensures maximum efficiency for how many bugs you will destroy. And then finally, the orbital precision strike can be used to deal with all heavy armored targets effectively. Bait a Bile Titan into spit and drop one underneath it and watch it fold. Stun any charger with our trusty grenade and drop one of these on them and they will turn to dust. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, catch our friendly impaler with its pants around its ankles, drop one of these swiftly on top of it and watch it set off into the sunset, metaphorically speaking, of course, folks. You could, of course, choose to drop one of the eagle or orbital strike slots and use a backpack instead if you were using the quasar or something similar, and I think there is an argument here for three choices: either the supply pack for better ammo economy and the cookout spam, the jetpack for that lovely mobility, especially if you're wearing light armor, and even the laser dog to add to that DPS and really get stuck in there. All three are totally viable. The choice is yours, folks. If you're looking for an S-tier blitzer loadout that also promotes an aggressive, swashbuckling frontline playstyle, then check out this next video. It's got you covered. Take care of yourselves, keep having fun, and I'll see you in the next one.